then I will share my screen. I'm actually going to start back in Strabo spot 2. And so once you're done with the field, you might have several to hundreds of stations, lots of samples. And once you're connected to the internet, you'll want to upload your project to Strabo Spot. So I'm going to just tap upload project to Strabo Spot. And so it's connecting to the online database. It's uploading the photos, the samples, it uploads everything. And when that's done, now I can, as I make thin sections or mounts, epoxy mounts for further analysis, I can move over to StraboMicro, which is a desktop application that we've been developing that's currently in a beta phase, but you can download it at strabospot.org as a kind of in a beta testing. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And I'm going to go over and share my screen. Okay, so exit that out. So this is the interface for Strabo Spot or StraboMicro. And so the point of StraboMicro is to give you a way to organize and keep track of all of the microscale data that you might be collecting from the field. And it hooks up to field data sets, or it can hook up to field data sets if you want. So I've pre-built just a kind of example project. And so here's an epoxy mount, and I have gone through and I've added polygon spots to each sample that's in here. So the layout here is that in the center there's your image. On the left are all of the images that you've imported, and on the right is kind of spot information, just like in the field app. Okay, I'm actually going to stop sharing. And I had opened up another project and it stopped working well. One second. Okay, I'm just going to start a project from scratch because I realize that it has been offloaded to the cloud with what I was working on. So share that again, share my screen. Okay, so when you go into StraboMicro, the first thing to do is you can open a local project that's just on your hard drive, or you can open a remote project and that's connected to the Strabo Spot database. So if I go open a remote project, then here's the project that I was just showing you on the iPad. And I can start right away. I can go, well, I was using the default data set, and I apparently didn't upload it to the database. So I can add a new sample from that project, or if I had uploaded it properly from the iPad, then it would show up as a sample that I could access. So you give some information about the sample, maybe an active eruption, do some sample description. You can talk about the material type, and then you can load a micrograph. So I'll load this up. And as with images, we want to add some metadata. So this is it's going to be just a plain polarized light image. You can add metadata for the instrument, although for a microscope, usually you don't need to do that. And then it will load the image up. And this one's going to be unoriented. So then you can actually set the micrograph scale. So I will just trace a scale bar on that image. This is going to be just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to pretend that this core is exactly 1 inch in diameter. So it's 2.4 centimeters roughly, I think, something like that. So then you have a scaled photograph of the sample or samples that you're working on. And you can, just like in Strabo, you can add point, line, and polygon spots to that sample. So for example, if I know that this is the sample that I'm going to kind of be working on, that I want to load some images up of, I can name that. And I can choose to label the spot on the map. I can also choose the spot color. So I often like to actually make it completely see-through for polygon spots. So there it is, it's labeled 2607. If I click away from it, the label can stay, but the polygon, it isn't too disruptive for the image. And I can begin to add data to this spot if I want. So I can add more descriptions. If I click in here, I can start searching for different types of data that I can input. So I started searching grain, and here are all the options in the data system for data that I can add to that spot. I can also add data directly to the micrograph without creating a subspot. And so depending on what kind of photomicrograph you have, you might want to do that. The real kind of key thing about StraboMicro is that you can add photographs onto this at a smaller scale onto this what we call the reference micrograph. So if I want to add an associated micrograph onto this, then I go through those same steps. I can load the metadata from the previous one, but I'm not going to do that because this is actually an SEM image, and it's a BSE image. And I won't load you can load all the SEM settings if you would like. And then you go through locating that micrograph. So locate on a scaled rectangle, and I'm just going to stretch and drag. So here's that micrograph. You can move it around, you can resize it, and you can use this red one to rotate it. So I'm going to go down here and just resize it. I'll just do an approximate job. But zooming in, it's starting to line up pretty nicely. You can kind of make it more opaque and transparent. Actually, I did a pretty good job on that. So I'm happy with that, and I'll finish. And now I can add spots onto this BSE image. And when I go out onto the parent image, I can choose to whether or not I want to view all the images on that. And that's by going to view, show spot labels. And then if you want to untoggle that image, you can click this little eye and it reloads the image without it. So then once you're down here, you might want to start, maybe you put it on the microprobe, you took some data. You can just attach a data file to this image. So associated files, and I can just attach a CSV file to that and add it. And so now if I go to associated files, I have EPMA data for this data set. I can download it and just open it up in, whatever spreadsheet program you have and view it. So that can kind of travel around, that table can then travel around with that image in StraboMicro. But you can kind of drill even further. For example, if you want to keep track of exactly where the points are that you collected data, you can just use point spots for that. So so here we are at spot 3, and at spot 3, I can also add an associated file and add just spot 3 data. So these are CSVs that I just I'd broken it out by each spot ahead of time. So you can get really detailed and start making spots on all over the image at all the locations where you collected data. So it becomes really good for keeping track of exactly where you collected data, ultimately where on the mount you collected data. And then this note box, maybe the last thing I'll show, this note box is just always here and it's active for whatever spot you're selected. So in this case, it's the micrograph notes. So it's just a free text box where you can write notes about what you're thinking for when you're looking at this image. And it's just a good place to kind of keep track of what you're working on, what you're doing. All right, Doug, anything else I should show, or Jason?
No, I think that's excellent. And I think what you can see here is the power of going from an outcrop image all the way down to that table of elemental data. Part of the inspiration for putting this together came from a Tephra workshop I went to in Portland, Oregon with the IABC meeting, and where Steve presented information about what to do with cyber infrastructure, for example, with electron microprobe data on glass and how to document and put it in. So I think part of this was inspired by those interactions long ago.
And one thing I will say that's really quite cool is that the way that these files are saved, so if I haven't saved it yet, but I can save it. It's in this kind of compressed format. And if I go to that, let's see, where is it here? So this contains all of the images, all of the spots that you have. So it's kind of one file that contains all of that, which makes it really easy to keep track of. You don't have to have like tons of folders and where did you keep that Illustrator file, where you marked where you took measurements and all that stuff. It kind of is self-contained. And then you can also, as you collect lots and lots of images within a project, you can use this groups tag to filter them. So you can say, well, I want to basically tag all of my BSE images so that I can have a group of BSE images so I can just look through BSE images. So this is completely customizable. What groups, it's almost, we think of it kind of like a music playlist in Spotify or any other music player where you can just kind of group songs by things that you like. So you can group photomicrographs by image type, by anything that you want.
Good question.
Do we have any questions that we need to?
Yeah, there's a bunch of really good questions about export abilities for StraboMicro. Do you have thoughts on that? Like, how can you export parts of this? And
yeah,
also
that's
be integrated into a relational database.
That's a great question. Because it's in beta phase, I think that's something that we still need input on about how people would like the data to be exported. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess it's kind of an unsatisfying answer, but we will be seeking input for that when we get to that phase of development.
So is it something that people in this group could send an email to one of you to kind of get it on your list if they have thoughts? Or how do you want to receive feedback from the community?
There
Jason,
is
do we still have,
go ahead.
Yeah. Do we still have that kind of feedback form set up, Jason?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's at the StraboSpot website.
Yeah, here, I'll pull it up. I'll show.
And then we can put the link in the chat to everyone.
Yeah. Actually, Jason, can you do you know where it is on the website?
Maybe while you're doing that, Doug.
I think we had one on GitHub. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, okay. It was through GitHub. Okay.
Yeah. Or we could just give everybody the StraboSpot email address. That'd probably be the easiest way.
Okay. Yeah. So we will put actually, Jason, can you put the StraboSpot email in the chat?
And then there was another one about being able to run StraboMicro offline because many instruments are not networked for obvious reasons. Is that a possibility? Yeah,
so actually right now, so you can do a self-contained project that is not connected to any online thing. We are just now building the kind of online storage. So right now, everything is local to your hard drive. In the current version. So if you were to download the beta version, nothing interacts with online except if you wanted to connect it to a field sample in an existing Strabo project. But you don't have to. You can just create a local project and just start from there.
Awesome.
So the StraboMicro, you can bring data in. It works as a nice image catalog for organizing things. We're just in the process right now of on the Exceed, NSF Exceed network is expanding, and we're right now we're pretty limited on storage, but very soon we should have a lot more storage on that network and be able to start accepting projects. We haven't opened it up for external contributions simply because there wasn't enough space. Jason, do we have an ETA now on that?
I've been talking to the Geoscience folks, and they say in the next 2 weeks. So.
Okay, so watch the website and watch for announcements there.
Yeah, and we can add after the meeting if there are additional notes that you want to add into the Q&A document. We can do that as well, and we can also share things out through the website and the listserv.
So, Steve, I can actually go back to the PowerPoint I wanted at this point and share it. I'll go through it very quickly. There are some points at the end, though, that I'd like to make that are on connectivity and other aspects. So.